Picture a subway car at rush hour. New York, London, Tokyo. It doesn't matter which city. Strangers packed together, swaying slightly, each one silently adjusting their weight to keep from falling over. Nobody in that car is thinking about it. But right now, every single one of them is running a physics experiment their body has been running without pause for their entire life. Because the thing you do so effortlessly, standing up, walking, running, is not normal. Look anywhere else in the animal kingdom. Dogs, cats, lions, even our closest relatives, chimpanzees, almost all of them default to 4 limbs on the ground. It's the safest design nature came up with. Lower energy cost, better balance, fewer ways to fall. So why did one species abandon that safe design and start balancing its entire body weight on 2 narrow points of contact where every second is technically a controlled fall? And here's the part that should unsettle you. Scientists still don't have one clean agreed upon answer. Because the theory that explains why we stand up is the same theory that explains why your body keeps quietly breaking down. To understand the whole truth, we're going to break this video down into 3 chapters, where the final chapter is the most unsettling of all. Chapter 1. The illusion of normal. Look around at any office anywhere in the world. 8, 9 hours a day, hunched at a desk. Then home onto a couch. Then a stiff back that greets you every single morning. Ask almost anyone over 25 in any country, and you'll hear some version of the same complaint. My back hurts. A software engineer with a slipped disc, a warehouse worker with chronic knee pain, a grandmother waiting on a hip replacement list. We tend to blame this on modern lifestyle. Sitting too much, bad posture, screens. But here's the problem with that explanation. If it were only about lifestyle, why is this pain so universal? Rich or poor, active or sedentary, in Berlin or Bangkok, back and joint pain eventually catches up with almost everyone. What if the pain isn't really your fault? What if it's the installment payment on a trade our species made millions of years ago, a decision none of us were part of, and none of us can opt out of? Because whenever we talk about what separates humans from other animals, we talk about the brain, we talk about tools, language, civilization, but the very first and arguably most radical shift was simpler than all of that. It was the moment we stood up. And that moment was never as simple as it looks. So the real question isn't how we walk, it's why we ever stood up in the first place, and the answer is a stranger and more costly than most people realize. Chapter 2. The trade that changed everything. Let's go back roughly 6 million years to East Africa. Our ancestors at the time looked something like today's chimpanzees. They lived in dense forest, moving on all 4s, using both hands and feet to climb and travel through thick canopy. Then the climate began to shift. East Africa slowly dried out. The lush, unbroken forests began breaking apart into open, scattered grasslands savanna. That change created a new problem. Cover was disappearing. Predators became easier to spot and easier to be spotted by. Food sources were now scattered farther apart, instead of clustered in one canopy. This is the exact turning point where scientists still argue over the why. The first theory, the better visibility hypothesis. In tall grass, standing upright instantly increases your height. You can spot predators from farther away. A simple survival edge. The second, and possibly the most data-backed, energy efficiency. Researchers have calculated that walking on 2 legs over long distances burns significantly less energy than moving on 4 limbs the way chimpanzees do. When food became scattered across wide distances, the individuals who could travel farther on fewer calories were the ones who survived to pass on their genes. A third theory, often underrated, is the free hands hypothesis. Standing upright frees your hands completely to carry food back to a group, to carry an infant, and eventually to make and use tools. Think about that for a second. The same hands that used to just support movement became the foundation for everything that followed. Toolmaking, farming, writing, building, all of it traces back to this one shift. There's a fourth theory too, thermoregulation. Standing upright reduces the surface area of your body directly exposed to overhead sun, which meant less heat absorption under the brutal African sun, a real advantage for survival in that climate. Put these together, and one thing becomes clear. Bipedalism wasn't a clever upgrade. It was a desperate adaptation, a response forced by circumstance, not a design chosen for perfection. And here's the catch. When nature is forced to rework a design quickly, under survival pressure, it doesn't build something perfect. It builds something that's just good enough to survive. And that good enough compromise is still quietly playing out inside every human body alive today. Chapter 3. The bill. We're still paying. Now here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. When our ancestors shifted from 4 limbs to 2, the entire skeleton, spine, pelvis, knees, feet had to be retrofitted. But evolution isn't an engineer with a blank blueprint. Evolution can only modify what already exists. Our spine, which was originally built to be a horizontal support beam, like it still is in 4-legged animals, had to be forced into a vertical, S-shaped curve, just to carry the full weight of the body stacked on top of it. That's a big part of why, even at a young age, back pain and slipped discs are so common across every population on Earth. Your spine is quite literally a jury-rigged structure, not engineered, just adequate. Now for something even more consequential, the pelvis and childbirth. To walk efficiently on 2 legs, the human pelvis had to become narrower so the rib joints could function properly. But at the same time, the human brain kept growing larger compared to other primates. A bigger brain means a bigger skull, and that means a bigger head at birth. So picture the conflict: a narrowing pelvis and a growing infant skull, moving in opposite directions. This is the well-known obstetric dilemma that anthropologists have debated for decades. It's the reason humans are the only species on the planet for whom childbirth is this dangerous and this painful. Most mammals give birth in minutes, with minimal complication. Humans can labor for hours, and globally, cesarean section rates have been rising for decades, largely because natural birth, for our species specifically, carries real risk baked into our own anatomy. And it doesn't stop there. Standing upright means blood has to fight gravity to get from your legs back to your heart. Over decades, that constant uphill battle contributes to varicose veins and circulation problems in aging populations worldwide. Your knees joints that in 4-legged animals share the load across 4 points of contact now absorb the entire body weight alone with every single step, millions of times over a lifetime. That's a major reason knee replacement surgery has become one of the most common procedures performed on aging adults in wealthy and developing nations alike. Here's the most unsettling insight of all. The body we consider normal is actually an unfinished patch job by evolution. A 4-legged frame that was converted for 2-legged use but never fully re-engineered for it. Every time your back aches, every time a birth becomes complicated, every time someone in their 60s needs a new knee, that's an installment payment on a trade made 6 million years ago. A trade our species is still paying off today. So the next time you stand up or walk down a street or catch your balance on a moving train, pause just for a second. What feels so natural to you standing, walking upright was never the result of a perfect design. It was a necessity, forced by a drying climate in a shrinking forest millions of years ago. That necessity made us the most dominant species on this planet. It freed our hands, it gave us tools, it gave us the very brain you're using to process this sentence right now. But it came with a price, and that price lives in your spine. It lived in the birth that brought you into this world. It lives in the knees of everyone who reaches old age. So we're left with one question. Are we really evolution's greatest success story? Or are we simply an unfinished design, quietly compensating for its own flaws one generation after another?